Hey guys, Greg here, Bone Tactical, and we're going to have a really cool project for you guys today, building some solid cedar tables. Well, the tables were already built. Going to do a epoxy, all right? Going to fill them with epoxy, and then all of the older model Bone Tactical knives, tomahawks, self-defense tools, going to put it in there. And actually, we got a base of beach sand. It's going to be pretty crazy. Let me show you. This is actually beach sand here. So you guys can check that out, beach sand. And over here, we have the cedar tables, all right? Already built these at the woodworking shop, okay? This is the same wood that we make our knife handles out of. Our knife boxes out of, and our EDC cigar trays. So this wood right here, same cedar. I wish you guys could smell this. This just smells like that amazing cedar smell. But it's that cedar, same stuff we use for our EDC trays, same cedar we use for the knife boxes. So all of my high-end custom knives come in a cedar box that's the same as that cedar. Some of the materials we're going to be needing for this are, you need an epoxy. I'm going to be using Super Clear 2.0 liquid glass, has up to a 2-inch pour, okay? You need a mixer, standard 5-gallon bucket. I got a level out here, drill, temperature gauge, which I'm probably not going to necessarily need, but you don't want to overheat. When I say that, the reason that I say that is you are going to be getting the bubbles out with fire. So propane to get the bubbles out. I'm also probably, since I've got little Bone Tactical products in there, which I'm going to show you what I'm going to put in the table right now. This is some of the stuff in here that I'm going to put in the table. So give you a little quick rundown. Check that out there. Now, let me actually explain to you how I'm going to put this stuff in the table. So that epoxy is very expensive, okay? It's very, very expensive. I'm trying to do a little bit more of a budget-friendly version. I happen to have this reclaimed cedar, which it's extremely expensive cedar, okay? But I found it myself, right, out in the jungles, and I had a bunch of cedar. So I was able to get the cedar. What I've done is I've created a kind of a tray, and there's a 2-inch tray at the top of that table. If I were to fill that whole thing with epoxy, it would take maybe like 15, 20 gallons of epoxy, which would be a couple $1,000s just of the epoxy, not to mention thousands of dollars of work that's already gone into it. The legs are really cool too. We made them metalworking out of rebar, which you'll see in a second. But so the idea is this sand right here, I'm actually going to load up into these boxes. So I'll show you really quickly how I'm going to do that. Literally going to take this beach sand here and just fill these trays. Okay? So that's kind of what it's going to end up looking like in there. If you want to get a close-up shot of that beach sand in there. And then on top of that beach sand, I'm going to put the Bone Tactical products in there like so, and then an epoxy coating over the whole thing. The actual legs of the table I made out of 3/4 inch rebar, okay? And they're going to go at the bottom like this, just doubled here, wrapped it with a little piece of regular metal, strip of metal, so it would have a flat surface to write on. It's going to be sitting on concrete. If it was going to be on a wood floor or something like that, I would actually drill and tap this so I could put some sort of a piece of rubber or something like that, or a hard polymer plastic into there. Otherwise, I'm going to just mount this faceplate, and it's powder coated. Since we have powder coating now for our knives, we're getting a little crazy with the powder coat, and we're powder coating everything. So I powder coated this, and I will take you guys through the whole process of working this and doing the work, and then I'll show you the finished product. All right, so we're going to talk a little bit about finishing them, and there's just a real quick tip that I wanted to discuss, and that's the fact that wood is always kind of moving. So it flexes, and with hot and cold temperatures, it'll swell and contract. One thing that I'm doing here is I'm going to put some rubber washers in between the metal and the wood. What that will do, and this is the base that we've made for these, just rebar, a little bit of metal working, and some powder coat. And I've gone ahead and put these washers here where I'm gonna place this. And what that will do, basically it will allow the wood to still contract and expand against the metal without having to necessarily crack the wood. Tables are complete. All right, guys, you saw the whole process, you saw everything. Now, I'm gonna give a little, I guess, breakdown of the cost involved and kind of recommendations on what you guys should do to try and get this done yourself or to try and do it yourself. If you wanted to try and do that, there's a lot of different ways that you can do epoxy. First off, I do have to say this is about $2,000 worth of epoxy. You guys saw what the epoxy was. It's just very expensive stuff. I put the sand in there as a kind of something that's cool, something that's Florida, since we're a Florida-based company, and something that represents the beach and everything like that, but also to fill, so I wouldn't need as much as epoxy. I would have probably needed $4,000 worth of epoxy if I had not used sand in these tables. So that's just something to consider. There's all kinds of volume calculators, and then it's just a simple formula that you can use. If you'd like to know what kind of a space you're trying to fill, just calculate the volume. I would always recommend buying more, but doing a second pour is not difficult at all. If you don't pour enough the first time, you just hit it with 320 sandpaper, clean it real good with alcohol, and then pour it again. The difficulties involved with epoxy are you really need a very clean environment. I don't have a big shop or anything like that, so there are some imperfections, some slight imperfections in the epoxy, just based off of where my shop is. There's a lot of different ways to do epoxy. You can build a mold, and then you can pour the epoxy in the mold, and then you can pull the mold off and refinish all the surfaces. That's a great way to do it. This is a very different way to do it. What I did, I actually built a table that has a space on the inside of it like a tray, or like think of it like a bathtub, and then poured the epoxy in it and let the epoxy harden. And if you do that right and you have the perfect conditions, everything's level, everything's done and the way you want it, nothing gets messed up in the process, then you can have a perfect table off a single pour. This epoxy supposedly is able to be poured 2 to 4 inches deep. I followed all of the instructions, and I've got a little bit of rippling in the epoxy. It's very slight, very difficult to see, but it was completely unavoidable because I've actually ended up doing another coat, even sanded it all down with an orbital buffer, and this is the first time I've used this epoxy, but I will say that I really think it's something that should be done under almost scientific type conditions. These tables are, if I had to put an estimate on what these tables would cost to build, I'd say $10,000 for the two of them, probably $5,000 a piece. But you guys know I have a metalworking shop. You guys know I have access to exotic hardwoods like this Spanish cedar. This is just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful Spanish cedar. Very difficult to get in the United States, this particular variety of Spanish cedar. Spanish cedar is kind of a, this is old growth, and it's a high quality Spanish cedar. Spanish cedar is pretty much any cedar that grows in Latin America or Mexico, and really anywhere in Latin America. Most of the cedars, a lot of the cedars are Spanish cedar. It's very different from American cedar. It's a hardwood. It's very similar to mahogany, and it's just a beautiful hardwood. This particular Spanish cedar is a more desirable subspecies of that Spanish cedar, and it's also old growth, so it has a lot of you can see the lines in it, the contrasting colors, all the way it goes from white to dark with deep red lines. There's no stain or anything on this table. This is the natural color of the wood. It's just clear coated basically. And then we bent some rebar, so we lowered the costs a lot by doing that, but that's not something, and then just cut and welded and powder coated, that's not something everybody can do. If you have a small shop and if you're pretty smart with, figuring things out and handy, I guess, handy's the better word. If you're handy, you could probably build these tables. And then depending on what you have inside of them here, because we've got, the tomahawks over there, which have this model. So we've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 models that all sold out for between $500 and $1,000 a piece. So, that's looking at $3,000 just in what's inside the table there. In this table as well, you could say it's probably equally a couple $1,000 just off of what we've put inside the epoxy. So then you add the epoxy on top of that, and you're very easily looking at 10,000. So I'm probably going to put this number at about 10,000. If you guys were to do it yourself and you had a decent shop, you could probably get it done. There are a lot of other ways you could minimize epoxy by doing a pour, maybe just utilizing a lot of wood, and then just doing maybe a coating of a pour, building a mold, and doing it like that where you won't need as much epoxy. You can limit to, you could make legs out of metal from the scrapyard. There's a lot of stuff you can do, and it just depends how much tools and time you have. These are all of our current models. What we put in the table was all the old models. So these are all the current models, and these are selling fairly quickly. I'm sold out of a lot of the stuff that's up here. I've actually just put one of the tie kanks back in stock. Just finished one of those up and put it up in stock on the website. That's actually the tie kank right there that's available for sale right now. So when that's gone, they're gone. I am working on doing some more of them in the future, but it's going to be several months. So do appreciate you guys watching. That's kind of the rundown. Let me know your thoughts on the tables. Really, I'm very happy with how they turned out, and I think it's something that I'm going to probably have for the rest of my life, and for the rest of if we continue to move warehouses as we grow. I'll show you their final resting place in the warehouse in a future video. And thanks for tuning in. Bone out.